problem gives me an amount of CH4, not in moles, but in liters. So the first thing that I have to do is I have to go from liters of CH4 to moles of CH4. Since the problem states that it's at STP, I can use the fact that 1 mole takes up 22.4 liters of space, and that's how I'm going to convert from liters of CH4 to moles of CH4. So this is my first step. After I get my moles of CH4, the next thing that I want to do is find out how many moles of H2O I'm going to get out for that number of moles of CH4. So that's what I say here when I say that our next step is going to be to go from moles of CH4 to moles of H2O. I'm going to use a chemical equation to find out how many moles of H2O I'll get for each mole of CH4 that I put in. Finally, I'll then know the moles of H2O, but the problem asks me not for the moles, but for the grams. How many grams of H2O am I going to get out? So the last thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to take the moles of H2O and convert that to the grams of H2O. And I can use that by using the molar mass, which is one mole of H2O is 18 grams. And that's how I'm going to do that last conversion. So these are my 3 steps. Liters of this to moles of this, CH4 to H2O, and then finally moles of H2O to grams of H2O. Let's get CP, which is 0 degrees Celsius and 1 atm of pressure. 1 mole of any gas takes up 22.4 liters of volume. This to moles, I want to use the conversion factor that is going to let me cancel out liters. So I want liters to end up on the bottom. That means that I'm going to use this version of the conversion factor. So 1 mole on the top divided by 22.4 liters on the bottom. Now I have liters up here and liters down here, so they cancel out. And when I do that math, my answer is 2.60 moles. Since mole is the unit that I'm left with, that's my final answer here. Okay? I rounded this to 3 significant figures. So, when I do this part, I find that I have 2.60 moles of CH4. Great. So we've cracked the first part of the question. Let's now go on to the second part. Now that I know the moles of CH4 that I have, I want to find out the moles of H2O that amount of CH4 on this side is going to give me. We can use the equation to find out the relationship here. If there's not a number in front of a molecule on an equation, it means that the number is 1. So this means that I have 1 CH4 molecule gives me 2 H2O molecules, or I can think of this in terms of moles. 1 mole of CH4 gives me 2 moles of H2O. I want to make a conversion factor of that, where I show 1 mole of CH4 gives me 2 moles of H2O. Here are the 2 possible conversion factors that I can use. Which one do I want to use? Well, I have to start with my moles of CH4, 2.60 moles of CH4 times which one of these do I want to use? I want to use the one with CH4 on the bottom so that it will cancel out those units and it will leave me with units of moles of water. So I'm going to do this times 2 moles of H2O divided by 1 mole of CH4. Moles of CH4 up here cancel out with the moles of CH4 down here, and I'm left with moles of water, which is exactly what I want for my answer. This is pretty easy math. It's going to be 2.6 times 2 divided by 1, and I'm going to get 5.20 moles of H2O. That's the answer to my second step. Now I know that I have 5.20 moles of H2O. Now the last thing that I need to do is I need to find out the mass in grams of 5.2 moles of H2O, because that's what my question asks me. In order to do that, I'm going to have to use the molar mass, which tells me the weight of 1 mole of water. I do that by adding up the weights of the individual atoms. I have 2 hydrogens, which weigh 1 each, plus 1 oxygen, which weighs 16. Add this up, and I get 18 grams is how much 1 mole of water weighs. With 5.20 moles of H2O, which of these conversion factors do I want to multiply by? I want to get rid of moles, so I'm going to use this one here on the left so that I have moles on the bottom to cancel out. So 18 grams divided by 1 mole. You may notice that sometimes I write it with E, sometimes I don't. It's no big deal. It's usually just when I write MOL, it's because I'm feeling lazy, but it's the same thing either way. Anyway, I have moles up here, moles down here. They cancel out, and I'm left with grams as my unit, which is perfect because that's what I want. And the math I'm going to do is 5.2 times 18 gives me 93.6 grams of H2O. And that 93.6 grams H2O